In this video, we're going to be discussing combining integers using an algorithm or using a rule. The very first thing to remember whenever you're combining integers is to make sure to box the number out with the sign in front. Now, part of the rule states, if these two numbers have the same sign out in front, meaning both numbers are positive or both numbers are negative, what you're going to do is find the sum of those two numbers, then use the same sign in the answer. You can remember that by the fact that same signs both start with S, and so does sum. They all start with S. Now let me show you why this works, why you're taking the sum of the two numbers. In my first example, we've got a positive 4 combined with a positive 5. Using colored chips is going to help me explain why we're taking the sum of these two numbers. So my first number I'm going to diagram as 4 positives. So there's 4 yellow chips. And then my second number is a positive 5. Now the reason why I'm taking the sum of these two numbers is because I'm combining yellow chips with even more yellow chips to come out with a total of 9 yellow chips. And yellow chips meaning positive, so my answer for positive 4 combined with a positive 5 would be a positive 9. Now let's take a look at the negative side of this. In this next example, I've got, boxing out the number with the sign in front of it, a negative 7 combined with a negative 3. To diagram this, I'm going to be using red chips, and I'll draw 7 negatives here. And then I'm combining them with 3 more negatives. So that's red chips combined with even more red chips, which means my sum here is going to be even more red chips. So 7 red chips combined with 3 red chips means 10 red chips. So that means negative 10. Now the second part of this rule discusses different signs. If you have different signs out in front of the numbers, where one of the numbers is positive and one of the numbers is negative. What you're going to do with this is find the difference and then use the sign of the bigger number. A way to remember this is different starts with a D and difference also starts with a D. So if they're different signs, you're going to take the difference and then use the sign of the bigger number. And again, with colored chips, I'm going to show you why this works. My first example shows boxing out the numbers with the sign in front. Negative 6 combined with a positive 9. So I'm going to use two different colors for this. Red for my negatives, yellow for my positives. So there's my 6 negatives, and I'm going to combine it with 9 positives. Kind of running into each other there. So the reason why you're taking the difference between the two is because of the fact that these 6 negatives are going to be canceling out 6 of the positives. If you recall the lesson on zero pairs, a red chip matched up with a yellow chip is it equals 0. It has no value. It's kind of neutral. So I'm creating 6 zero pairs here. And then whatever is left over is going to be my answer. So these are all worth nothing. And what I have left over is 3 positive chips. So again, these 6 negatives are going to be canceling out 6 of the positives. And then after that happens, I have 3 positives left over. So negative 6 combined with a positive 9, you can take the difference between those numbers. The difference between 6 and 9 is 3, and then 9 is the bigger number here, and it's positive, so my answer is going to be positive. The next one goes along with the same rule. We've got a positive 10, and then that plus means you're just combining these two numbers, so it doesn't really change much here. You're combining a positive 10 with a negative 5. So what that means with colored tiles or chips, you've got 10 positive chips combined with 5 negative chips. So I always ask my students, which one outweighs which, meaning which number outweighs the other, and by how much? This positive 10 is going to outweigh the negative 5 by 5 chips, and they're positive. 5 of these negative chips are going to be canceling out these 5 positive chips, so those are the 0 pairs right there. And then what you have left over is 5 positive chips. So a positive 10 combined with a negative 5 should equal 5 positive chips. Now if you're just using the rules, I've got different signs here. Positive, negative. I'm going to take the difference between the two. The difference between 10 and 5 is 5. So I'll put that 5 down, and then you're going to use the sign of the bigger number. 10 is bigger than 5 and it's positive, so my answer remains positive. So hopefully you understand the mechanics of why you're taking the sum or why you're taking the difference regarding the signs of your number. So let's take a look at a few examples. My first example, boxing out the number with the signs in front of it. We've got a negative 4. This plus sign just means that you're putting those two numbers together. It can be there. It doesn't have to be there as in the next expression, but it can be there. It doesn't really change much. So you're combining negative 4 with a negative 1. So you're asking yourself, do I have same signs or do I have different signs? Well, the 4 and the 1 have the same sign out in front. They're both negative. So I'm going to take the sum of the two numbers. The sum of 4 and 1 is 5, and then I'm going to use the sign of the numbers, which is negative. In terms of colored chips, that's 4 red chips combined with 1 more red chip. So they're all red chips, and you're going to have 5 total. The next expression, boxing out the number with the sign in front of it, I've got 8 negatives combined with 3 negatives. So negative 8 combined with negative 3. You're going to ask yourself the question, do they have same signs or do they have different signs? Well, they're both negative, so they both have the same sign out in front. If you've got the same sign, you'll take the sum of the two numbers. Sum of 8 and 3 is 11, and then we use the same sign in your answer, negative, which means you're combining 8 red chips with 3 more red chips. So altogether, you're going to have 11 red chips. Now here's an example where we've got different signs. We've got a positive 9 combined with a negative 10. If we've got different signs, you're going to take the difference between the two numbers. The difference between 9 and 10 is 1, and then you're going to use the sign of the bigger number. 10 is bigger than 9, so I'm going to use the sign of the 10, which is a negative. So positive 9 combined with a negative 10 should equal a negative 1. Again, 9 positives are going to be canceling out 9 of these negatives, and then what you would have left over is 1 negative, which is why my answer is a negative 1. Let's take a look at a few more examples. My first example is a negative 4 combined with a negative 5. If you box out the number with the sign in front, it shows that you're combining two numbers that have the same sign, both negative. So you're combining 4 red chips with 5 more red chips, and your answer should be 9 red chips, so negative 9. You've got the same sign, so take the sum and use the same sign in your answer. My next example, boxing out the number with the sign in front of it. You've got a positive 6 combined with a negative 8. So you've got two numbers that have different signs in front. So if you've got different signs, you're going to take the difference and use the sign of the bigger number. These 6 positives are going to cancel out 6 of the negatives, and what you're going to have left are 2 negative chips. The difference between 6 and 8 is 2. 8 is bigger than 6, so I'm going to use the sign out in front of the 8 for my answer. Next example, I've got different signs. positive 10 combined with a negative 2. Different signs, take the difference between the number and use the sign of the bigger number. So the difference between 10 and 2 is 8. And 10 is the bigger number here, so I'm going to use the positive out in front of the 10, or that's understood to be there. So my answer is a positive 8. Next example, boxing out the number with the sign in front of it. The 5 is negative, so we've got negative 5 combined with a negative 3. So that's negatives combined with more negatives, which is why you're going to take the sum and then use the sign of the numbers there. So 5 red chips combined with 3 more red chips produces 8 red chips. Next example, negative 9 combined with a negative 3. Same sign, they're both negative. Take the sum of 9 and 3 is 12, and then use the same sign in your answer. They were both negative, so my answer is negative. And the same thing goes for the last two. Boxing out the number with the sign or signs out in front shows that we're combining a positive 4 with, and this is where verbally reading these integers comes in handy, this is known as the opposite of a negative 8. So the opposite of a negative 8. So if you diagrammed negative 8 as 8 red chips, the opposite of 8 red chips would be 8 yellow chips, which means the opposite of a negative 8 is a positive 8. So what we're really working with here is combining a positive 4 with a positive 8. So I can rewrite that as 4 combined with a positive 8. So they are both positive, they have the same sign, so I'm going to take the sum and then use the sign in my answer, same sign. So they're both positive, the answer is positive, and it should be a positive 12. Next example, I've got negative 2 combined with, again, the opposite of a negative 5. And the opposite of a negative 5 would be a positive 5. So I'm combining negative 2 with a positive 5. Now they have different signs out in front, and one of them is negative, one of them is positive. So with different signs, I take the difference between the two numbers. The difference between 2 and 5 is 3, and then I'm going to use the sign of the bigger number. Well, 5 is bigger than 2, so I'm going to use the positive sign, and I could write it, or I could just understand that 3 to be positive. The answer should be a positive 3. So 2 of these negatives are going to cancel out 2 of the positives, and then I'd have 3 positives left over. If you have any questions about combining integers using a rule or an algorithm, please stop by for a morning tutoring session with questions prepared to ask. Thank you.